Welcome to the Next Play podcast. We are overcoming mistakes in athletics and in life. We got a very special guest today. It is Chip Hare. Chip is the athletic director at Piqua High School in Dayton, or near Dayton, Ohio. And then I've got my co-host Greg Stewart. Chip, how you doing today, brother?
Great, Tommy. Thanks for having me on, Greg. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
We got Greg. Greg's got the parents in, so we promise to keep this episode short so he can go hang out with the family. Greg, of course, is the Hall of Fame softball coach at Oregon Tech. He also, Chip, while we were in the little pre-meeting thing, he's been he's National Character Coach of the Year or something like that. So, it's more than just a winning coach. He's also a winning human being. So anyway,
Tommy keeps trying to embellish all my accolades, but at the same time, I wouldn't be on here if it wasn't for Tommy and all he's done for sports. So I appreciate being a part of this podcast.
Tommy's job is to promote his people and other people, but he's pretty good at what he does. There's no question about it.
National Character Coach, though, of the Year. That is something I've never been even mentioned for, with all my gifts and so. All right, so Chip, tell us just a brief bio. I know Chip is you can't see if you're watching because we're all sitting down. But Greg, Chip is a couple inches taller than me. He's not a short dude.
Oh, wow.
Former college basketball player. So maybe quick. Let's start as a where you played college basketball, and then go from there. Your career.
Well, I think first of all, again, thanks for having me, Tommy and Greg. But I think it behooved me to tell you I grew up in Massillon, Ohio, and was born and raised there. And the reason I say is because that's kind of where I got my love for athletics. Some might know Massillon as a football community, and in fact, I just saw Max Preps just came out with the top 200 high school football programs in the country, and Massillon was number 4. So they're pretty serious about it. When you're born in Massillon, you get a football in your crib. They put that at the Booster Club, has a football that they come and they put that in your crib when you're born. So that sports is pretty.
That's a true story? You're not kidding.
That is. I'm not embellishing that at all. That is completely true.
That's like the pacifier mouthpiece. The pacifier that's shaped as a mouthpiece, so kids get that comfortability putting that in early.
That's some next level stuff right there. But yeah, wow.
There's some documentaries and movies on that stuff, but I know that's not what we're here to talk about. But a reason I say that is because it really, as a child, I really was surrounded by, and all the way up until I left for college, was around athletics, and those are very passionate people. Not just in Massillon, but the area I was in. I went to Massillon Perry High School. Speaking of Hall of Famer, played for a Hall of Fame high school coach and Larry Wilson, and then had the great fortunes to go on and play at the University of Dayton, which I played there for 4 years, and then moved to had a short stint, and I do mean short, probably 2-month stint in Belgium where I played professionally. Came back to the States and got back to Dayton where I was living. And
so I didn't realize that, Chip. Can you tell me the Belgium piece? I think a lot of guys go over there thinking this is what I'm going to do, and then they realize maybe this isn't everything I thought it was going to be. So what was that like playing overseas back? Not that you're all three of us. The topic of today's show is we're all 50 years old, and we've stopped at 50. And we're talking about what we wish we'd known when we were younger coaches. So anyway, all three of us are 50 years old. So Chip, what was it like playing in Belgium there? A lot of guys want that. That's their goal.
Right. Yeah. It was a learning experience, as they all are. But for me, I learned a lot about not just the level of the game of basketball, but I started to learn about how business works, how the inner workings behind the scenes of running an organization and being a part of a group and team. And that was, and learning and living in a new culture was unique. And
Were you in
I
Brussels or
I was outside. I was 30 miles from Brussels, in a little small town called Cagnon,
yeah.
and it was a village. They really did a great job, took care of me. I had an apartment and a car, and I had the abilities to, they paid me a decent salary, and
Yeah.
and the contractor was, it was a year contract, but there was a 2 month period where it was kind of like, hey, let's see how it goes after 2 months, and if it's not what you or I want, we'll shake hands and go the different direction. And essentially, without boring you with all the particulars, that is what happened. We just agreed to go in different directions. They are, and are still I still think they're in existence. They had a good group. You play with every team over there has two Americans. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's still the
It
rule.
is. It is for the most part still the
Yeah,
rule.
I think it is. Yeah. So each, team can have no more than two Americans. And learning how to play a different style of basketball. But
Yeah.
probably moreover is just learning, what you kind of said earlier. You everybody's dream is to play professionally, and you get
Yeah.
in that situation, and just like any other situation you see in any other professional sport, got to have the right scenario with the right people, and all
Yeah.
the stars got to align. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard, mentally, the grind, not just physically, but mentally as well. So I
Now, were
have a
you
lot.
married when you were over there? Were you
I was not.
single? So you were by
I left
yourself,
right from
basically.
college, and
Yeah.
I was there. I left in July, and I came back in September.
Wow.
And it really was, just a period of time when the transition, probably me, in my life, mentally trying to figure out where am I going to be in life. And
Yeah.
it was the first time that, okay, now basketball, the sport that you have been around since you've been little,
Yeah.
playing, now what are we going to do, how we transition life. And
Yeah.
it took me back to Dayton.
Then of
Wow.
course there's the language barrier. Do they speak? Was that the French or the Dutch speaking
I was
area?
on the
Like,
French side. Boy, you're really good. Yeah, Greg. Yeah. And Brussels, or excuse me, Belgium is really smaller than, like, for the state of Ohio. It's smaller, so once you get on the other side of Brussels, then you're on the Dutch side. So you had to be very. I was never good at speaking the language, but I was good at understanding by the time I left what at least they were saying. I
Yeah.
could throw words out by the time, and I could carry a conversation and just kind of bits and pieces. But it's yeah, the food, the culture, it was very, very interesting. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences, Greg.
Yeah. So, all right. So you leave, you go back to Dayton. Now, how many years have you been at Piqua now?
Well, I was actually, when I got back to Dayton, just real quickly, I was working for a company in downtown Dayton. That was it was a booster for the Flyers, the Dayton Flyers, where I played in college. Was there for a couple of years, and then I started getting into the coaching gig. I coached a girls' high school team in Dayton at Chaminade-Julienne, and then went and took the Edison State Community College boys assistant coach's job, where I coach with a great man named Larry Leffel. And Larry and I coached for a couple of years, and that's when I got the itch that I probably, you both had gotten at some point when you thought you wanted to be a head coach. You thought it was a great idea to be a head coach, and then you jump into that role. It was a year of head coach at a high school called Sydney High School, which is just north of Piqua, 10 miles. Coached the girls team there for a year, and then came back to Edison while I was still employed full time. By the way, at Edison, I coached the men's team for a couple of years, and I worked at Edison State for after I left the sales position that I was in. I worked in admissions and activities. And then eventually athletics, where I became the athletic director there. So Edison State I was there 15 years before I made the switch over to Piqua High School in the current position that I'm in as athletic director.
And Greg, Piqua they have small college facilities. It is one of the nicest high schools I've been to. I mean, it's phenomenal. High school football stadium's gorgeous. It's just it's unbelievable. So, all right. So here we are. We're both 50. We're all 50 years old. John Gordon, did y'all read where he said he's stopping at 50? Like, people ask him how old he is. He just says 50.
Yeah, I heard him say that.
Yes, that's it. We're all 350.
I appreciate.
So anyway, we're talking, but what we wish we would have known when we were younger coaches. And so who wants to go first on that? Let's start. I of course didn't prepare Chip for this, that I was going to throw this question out. So I'll let me go first then, since I didn't tell Greg either. I think my biggest regret as a younger coach was expecting it was all going to be fair. What I mean by that was that the places you work, that they would treat you fairly. And I didn't, especially in Christian institutions, I thought they would just treat you differently maybe than non-Christian institutions. So I desired that fair treatment, and I couldn't get over it when life wasn't fair, and life isn't fair. That is my number one regret from being a younger coach. And the recommendation I would give to younger coaches is don't expect it to be fair. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be without obstacles, and just get over it. Doesn't do you any good to complain anyway. So that is my number one regret. And I wish someone would have said, hey, it's not going to be fair, Tommy. So who wants to go next?
Well, I got one, that I'm thinking about even today in my coaching career, and that is how to, really look at this profession as something that is, all about relationships. And when I first got into it when I was younger and thought, yeah, I want to do this, and I was coaching at my alma mater, there was just so much pride factor in me and wanting to win. And it was still about, winning and, trying to say, okay, hey, I think I can put together the right kind of practice and game plan or whatever to win. And I had a couple years early on in my coaching career at my alma mater where we had a couple bad years. And I kind of lost sight of the fact that I looked at these guys more as, oh, they're not good enough to help me win. They're just not the right kind of athlete or the right kind of toughness or mentality. And I didn't really build the relationships that I should have with that group of guys. And so I still feel like it comes down to win or lose. You got to make sure that your players know you care about them as a person away from the field or court or whatever. And, that was one of the things that I definitely would love to go back and tell my younger self that, hey, even if you had a bad year, you're in the trenches with the same guys.
I think that's Chip. What do you think? I think a lot of younger coaches make the mistake of worrying about what they don't have rather than trying to do a better job with what they have. And obviously you weren't saying that, Greg. You were talking about relationships much deeper and bigger, but made me think that a lot of young coaches do. They worry about, hey, what this guy can't do rather than figuring out the strengths of their team. Thoughts on, yeah. How about you, Chip?
Well, it's funny you use the word Tommy regrets, because one of my coaching mentors told me you should never have regrets. But that being said, I do think that as the evolution, as we grow as professionals and coaches.
All right, how about what you wish you would have known? I think that might be a better question.
I guess for me, if we were all in our bodies at 25 and knew what we knew at 50, I think we would certainly approach things differently. I think sometimes for me, when I was young, I was certainly a different younger coach, as we all were, than when I was older. I made it in my younger years. I thought it was about me and about what I wanted to do and what we were going to figure out as a staff to make those guys or girls. But I learned that it was actually my first head coaching job. I'll never forget that. Of course, when you coach girls, this can happen. And I mean this respectfully, but they made me very clear that it was not about me. It was about them. And I take that, it's a big statement, but and everything from the time from just your game preparations and your scouting, but also in because we spend so much time with these people outside of the season, trying the one thing was to listen, and to listen more intently to what they're saying, not trying to drive what I wanted to do, and I'm still learning how to listen at 50. I'm still trying to be better at that.
Yeah.
So I guess being a better listener when I was younger was something that I think if I was a better listener then, as I'm still trying to attain. I've not reached the summit on that, by the way, but I think listening is such a big part of listening to your players, listen to your staff, listen to your family, listen to the people you work with, because you learn a lot when you listen.
Wow. Yeah. I would concur on that as well. Greg, you're not a great listener either, Greg, so I'm sure I'll go ahead and answer for you.
I'm learning.
I'm kidding.
I'm 50 going on, whatever the next year is in my age, and I'm still learning how to be a better listener. And
you're stopping at 50. You're done. We're all 50. That's it. All right. So, one thing I think is unique, Chip, is all three of us have coached men and women, males and females. That's pretty unique. So what are the differences between connecting with your female athletes and male athletes? Go ahead, Greg.
Well, that was definitely something that took me a couple of years to transition into, honestly, not being afraid to show your emotion when you're upset. And it's obviously easier to do sometimes with guys because sometimes when you're trying to challenge them to be better, raising that voice or getting into them a little bit and trying not to be personal, but at the same time, challenge who they are so that they wanted to get better. That was a little bit of the football coach in me talking there too. But
so you're saying when you first switched, you felt like you held back too much?
I wanted to when I first started coaching ladies, but I had one of my All-Americans who I still stay in touch with today that was in that first group of young ladies that I coached softball with. And I'll tell you right now that team, that first 2 years I coached softball, I really give a lot of credit to the way those young ladies handled themselves and what kind of people they were for how much I started loving softball. But early on in my career with them, I had a hard time just letting loose and getting upset and showing them. So I did something a little bit more where I would just kind of, turn my back sometimes and kind of stomp and pout and actually try to show with body language that I was upset rather than, yelling something across the field or raising my voice because I thought, well, I don't want to, be intimidating. And one of my, in a really poignant way, said, Coach, we don't want to see you pout. Something not going well in the game, don't pout. Screw that, say it like, let's move on. And then that's when I just learned, I was like, hey, male or female, these ladies are competitors and they want to be coached and they want to be challenged and they want to be in the middle of the fire too. So, just because I'm a guy coaching ladies doesn't mean they don't need to know when I'm a little bit disappointed verbally. And I think over the years, I've learned how to communicate that more poignantly without raising my voice, but I don't know any coach that doesn't get a little bit excited or their voice changes a little bit when they're upset or frustrated.
Hey, Chip, Greg's got this stare though. He'll stare a hole through you, man. Okay, it's kind of scary. It really is like So, how about you, Chip? Differences, would you say? I think a lot of young coaches are say, hey, especially males, do I want to coach men or women, males, females? So, thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, I got into coaching females because my sister at the time my first coaching gig was actually a senior in high school when I coached my sister's 8th grade team. And that was my first taste into it. And I learned at that young part of my life that girls are wired differently. And certainly being a male myself and playing, but even as I evolved in the coaching and saw it even more so, the biggest thing I saw was girls really, really want to please their coach when they play. And I don't know, Greg, if you see that at the collegiate level. I see it at the high school level, even today in 2023, that the kids really want to, they want to do well for themselves. Don't get me wrong, but there is something that they really want they want to do well for the coach. And not everyone, but generally speaking, that's what I see. And, and the guys, while they certainly want to connect with their coach, they really just want to compete and play hard. So, and they want to win. So you've got it's a balancing act that I saw, but I think for myself as a coach, connecting with those girls was important. And it goes back to the relationship thing that you said. But I had a problem, Tommy. You said a few days ago when you're here in Piqua, which, by the way, Tommy, thanks for coming again to Piqua to talk to our kids. They really had they got a lot out of it. One of the things you said was learning to take coaching. And yes, there is an element to taking coaching, but there's also a side on the coach's side that I think you have to not take it personally when a kid doesn't perform to the way you want them to. I think sometimes we take it as, they're not doing what I asked them to do, and it's a personal thing, and then it becomes a wedge sometimes, if not necessarily verbally, but mentally between you and that player. We as coaches and young coaches have got to keep this in mind, whether coaching girls or guys. It's not personal. Just because the person can't make the play that you want them to, or didn't make the play that you didn't want them to, they do want to make the play. But you've got to figure out, this is the psychological, how you get that player to overcome or make that play, because everybody's different. Some people you have to, Greg, as you said, just shout it out and tell them. And then there's others that you kind of have to work through them, because you have to find out what makes them tick. So I think as a coach, if you're saying back to Tommy those things, it's not personal, even though it is personal a lot, because we love the sport, we love coaching, and we love what we're doing. And doggone it, they should be picking up on this stuff. It keeps us up at night as coaches, but it's not something that the kids are intentionally trying to, most of the time, to not perform, because ultimately they want to perform well for themselves and their team.
Chip, what would you say to the high school coach who says, "Hey, I want to coach in college. I want to coach in college," because you've done both. Greg, you've never coached at the high school level, have you?
I have not.
So what would you say to that person? Because I've always heard said, and I would tend to agree, a good high school job is better than a bad college job. Maybe some thoughts on that.
Yeah,
for younger, I hear young guys all the time. Yeah, I'd like to get a college job next. I'd let it go. Well, maybe you think you would, but I don't know that you. So anyway,
maybe the old adage of "careful what you ask for" kind of deal. And I said, I think again, a lot of it has to do with the school that you're going to. And Tom, you talked about that at the top of the program. What kind of a school do you want? What kind of support are you going to get from your administration? And what are your aspirations of college? Because there's different levels of college. Greg's at a great NAIA program in school, and I'm sure if he's winning there, he's getting support that's going beyond just the softball field. So it's the same thing at a college. Of course, you can make that argument for high school, but college, it's a different piece, because you get to go out and you get to pick the players that you feel fit your program and fit your philosophy and what you're trying to do on and off the field, court, whatever that sport is you're coaching.
Which is the number one, obviously. I think that's number one for being if you want to go coach in college. However, it's not like you're just picking. I mean, depending on the institution where you are, I mean, you're Like
Well,
Greg can
Greg,
only,
Greg's a great Greg. How's the last few years? I mean, you talk about picking your programs. How is the last few years with the COVID year, that the extra year that they get, and how the transfer portal has changed your life, and then even now the NIL deal? How has that changed your? Tommy, I know that's your show, but I'm going to go ahead and ask
yeah.
Greg if you don't mind.
Well, I'm gonna answer it for him, Chip. So here's how it's changed. Not much for Greg because he's at an institution where they have gotten that fifth year. So I think it's caused him to recruit fewer kids, but their ladies are going there for nursing and engineering and all these tech degrees. So they're not leaving Oregon Tech. They're going in there and they're staying and they're not bailing out because they're there. I mean, his team GPA, he's got a really rough job, Chip. His team GPA is about a 3.9. I mean, like speaking to their team, I mean, it's unbelievable how smart they
Wow.
are and how disciplined they are and all those things. So I would say he has no one ever transfer probably. Now he gets a couple transfers in maybe, but again, he's got to get the right person because they've got to go into whatever medical because it's Oregon, because it's a technical school, so they don't get just recreation majors or procrastination majors like I was.
Tommy's right about that, Chip, that it hasn't affected us any more than having some players that have been getting extra years in the last 2 years. And believe it or not, it's one more year that the way the NAIA rules panned out that, you could have an extra season because of COVID. So after next year, the recruiting will change a little bit in terms of not having a bunch of fifth-year seniors in programs like we've seen in the last 2 years, and like I've been the beneficiary of, to be honest with you. My shortstop, who's an All-American, will be a fifth-year senior this year, and so to have somebody of that caliber an extra year, it's definitely special. But the one thing I want to say, and that to that question, Tommy, and then what Chip brought up, is I really feel like I still think high school coaches have such a great opportunity to build the foundation of how young people think and how they value different things in sport. And I envy that to some degree, but at the same time, I just have a lot of respect for the foundation, for the mindset that high school coaches are able to instill in young men and women that want to get in athletics, because whether they play college sports or not, they're still learning about something that's hard, that's not easy to do, that you have failure in. And then how do you in turn, try to work through the difficulties of getting better at your sport, or, whatever technical skill set that you have to improve on. But the one thing I still think it does is it teaches the foundation or fundamentals of, how to work hard and achieve something. And that's something that I see a little bit where there's, sometimes an entitlement mindset that, hey, if I go play for a club sport and I pay all this money to be on this club sport, and I'm paying money to play these extra games in the off season, then that means I'm going to get a scholarship somewhere to play. And that's not always the case. But I definitely, high school coaches are instrumental in creating the right mindset for young athletes.
Yeah. I mean, obviously no doubt. And I think we could go a ton of different directions with that, but Chip, so when you were at Edison, what else did you do besides coach?
Well, my full-time job was, and I say full-time because the coaching was like in high school as a supplemental position. So it was, I say part-time, but it's full-time job. We know that. But my other responsibilities were, I worked in admissions where I would go to local high schools and meet with, we had roughly about 50 high schools that I would visit a couple times a year to recruit for the school. And then I was in charge of also activities on campus for our students. Of course, being a community college, you don't have, they're not any housing on campus. So, you're looking to try to attain people on your campus to keep people active and engaged. So that was a big part of my thing. And then I ended up, before I left, which by the way, I never looked to leave. I wasn't trying to aspire to get to the high school job. I was just fortunate that I said the only job that I would probably ever leave was Piqua High School, which was across the cornfield from where Edison sits. I was in development and I was working in raising money for the college. So that was, for me, I guess I look at some of the things that go back to what Greg said. What I enjoy about the high school spot versus, not that I didn't enjoy it, but a lot of times you're being able to create and build a foundation of work and mental and physical expectations for kids as to where they want to be when they do graduate and walk across the stage and get that diploma, and you can kind of help develop in part of that development process versus when they come to you and Greg, you've got that. They're pretty much now developed. Now you're just getting them ready for the next phase in their life, whatever that phase is, whether it's in your world, getting a nursing degree and getting on into a hospital or doctor's office work or whatever the other profession is. It's two very similar, but yet two very different type of works that you're doing. And I don't know, being that I've been in it, I don't know which one's more important because I think they're both important. I think it's where you're at is obviously where you're putting your focus to, but for high school, it's really developing that mental and physical and emotional and spiritual piece for their mind.
Yeah. And I do think that high school coaches don't realize most small college coaches do something else besides just coach. Like Greg, for example, is now assistant AD and he's always doing something. And like running the concession at basketball games. I mean, do y'all have any coaches that just coach, Greg?
No. I mean, there's a couple coaches that their other jobs or other duties as assigned aren't as but just about every coach on our staff has something else they're in charge of in the off season, or whether it be doing the student improvement stuff or being a part of Title IX. I mean, we have coaches that just have different titles. So yeah, even at a school of our size, that I think is a bigger NAI institution compared to most, we still have coaches that just coach. But where we're blessed is, unlike maybe some other colleges, whether it's at the junior college or the 4-year system, where really the coach's paycheck comes mostly from whether or not they're a professor and they're teaching classes. Have that curriculum that we're having to teach term in and term out that can take you away from preparing yourself for a day at practice or travel and scouting reports or anything, in season. So that's where we're fortunate, is we're not also teaching other than maybe a handful of different physical education courses.
And one reason that I say a good high school job is better than a bad college job is a lot of these bad college jobs pay a lot less than a high school faculty member may make, and especially with coaching supplements. And
not to mention the opportunities that you get in a state educational sometimes.
Greg said, I'm assuming you were saying, you broke up there, I'm assuming you were alluding to retirement, you said, is what you said. No doubt. So
the only reason why I bring it up now is the age that we're in. You sit
we're
there
50.
you look back at all the years that you coached and what you enjoyed, but then retirement's got to be on the horizon at some point.
Well, we're not.
I don't. Popovich, and I think I just saw him get some outlandish contract, and he's getting ready to turn 75 or whatever.
Well, Chip, we just met with our financial advisor, and he said if book sales keep going the way they are, I can retire when I'm 130. So I'm getting ready for that. So you were talking.
Hey, you're right on track then, right?
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm ready. Yeah. So Chip, you're looking at some different. I know you're Piqua's. You're looking at some side things you kind of alluded to. Can you share about those at all? That I wanted to ask you more about this the other day. Did you, first of all, fundraising too, working in development? Maybe give us some keys for that, and then some possible. You said you were looking at some something with travel too. Were you able to talk about that at all? That'd be fascinating.
Yeah, that's mostly the Mrs. Gig, but I'm behind it in support. You know how that goes. It's important to support your family and life and people that support you. So it's that's kind of a deal there. But I will talk about that in a minute. But the fundraising piece is it's been something I have dived into in some shape or form when I was at Edison a little bit, and then probably have done probably as much, if not more of it at Piqua, just a different form and version of it. In fact, we're just wrapping up our fall program at advertising, school year advertising, which you've got your traditional program that people pick up at your events. And then also we have we're very fortunate. We're blessed to have two big jumbotrons, one at our football stadium and then one in our gymnasium, which is just we're lucky to have. So it has replays, and we can get our kids on there and give them exposure and do different things with all the different programs and kids that just to kind of give them an opportunity to engage our crowd within the games. But we also have advertising with that. So it's something where, Greg, you use I don't want to sound like a cliche, but it's a relationship you have to have with your community. They have to believe into your product, which is our kids and our school district. And we're really lucky at Piqua to have a community that supports our schools. We've got a great administration that reestablishes, I guess the word is brand, because that's what you're supposed to stay, our brand of our kids. And it's easy to go out and sell when you believe in what you're doing, number one. And number two, I think that's the first thing, you got to believe in your product. And number two, you've got to believe that you can give them some value, added value to what the advertisement piece is, and they feel like it's a partnership, not just me giving you money.
How did you do that, Greg? He has a field they're going to rename Greg Stewart Field at some point out there. It's a turf stadium. They built a turf stadium, which the costs. Do you mind sharing the cost for that?
Yeah, the overall remodel was 1.4 million, but we were blessed to get the majority of that. Over $1 million from one family, one donor, and his wife who's passed away, and just were great fans of our university and particularly our softball program. And people talk about that all the time, and sometimes it's, yes, you cultivate those friendships and relationships, but not too many schools have the opportunity to have that type of booster at our level. Obviously we're talking, most people that give at that level is at the big NCAA institution. So I'm a direct beneficiary, and we're blessed to have $1 million+
Well, Chip, he's very humble, as you can tell. I mean, I met the guy that gave him that amount of money. I mean, if Greg wasn't so likable and didn't connect with the gentleman, they wouldn't be in that field right now. I mean, it is a first-class facility. And so, I know he's going to be humble about it, but I do think both you guys are good at the fundraising piece. So let's spend our last couple minutes, like maybe what are the keys? It's obviously relationships, right, Chip? I mean, it's relationships, just Absolutely. Like it is with the kids. And probably listening's pretty important too with the whole fundraising piece, I would say. So
the theme of this whole topic today for how to talk to the younger coaches about what's important is, even though you may have a plan for your coaching career, you always have to look at it like you're going to go into a program, and whether it's a high school that you're coaching at or a college that you're coaching at, and think about it more. And hey, I could be here for longer than 1 or 2 years, and it being a stepping stone. Because when I moved to Oregon and started coaching at Klamath Falls, I thought, hey, I may be here 2 years and I'm going to try to find the next baseball gig. And here I am 20 years later, blessed, and met my wife here, and the rest is history, as they say. But I still think a young coach, when it comes to fundraising, always has to look at, how can I, in a real, I would say intentional way, but at the same time, genuine way, build relationships with people that could help me benefit my program. But more importantly, it still goes back to, if people think they're benefiting the students or the student athletes, then they're going to give for that cause.
How much do you raise a year for your operating budget, Greg? And I guess if that's an okay question to ask you too, Chip.
Numbers, but yeah, I mean, we're again fortunate at Oregon Tech to have state funding and state lottery funding that helps our athletic department, and our school does a great job of supporting us as what I would always say is the front porch to the university, because they value what athletics has done in terms of the name brand. But typically we're raising anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 a year to help go towards offset costs that aren't in our budget. And travel, as we can all sit here and talk about inflation, has been
Yeah.
a bit. And so that's where, a lot of ways, if we want to go on a nice trip, like we'll go on a nice preseason trip down to Arizona, to fly down there, anymore, you're looking at a big ticket price for airfare and hotels and meals for that amount. You got to go outside and fundraise to do that.
Yeah. How about you, Chip?
Yeah, I'm very similar to Greg. I mean, you get your state certainly help with those things with budgeting. All of our ticket sales really help benefit all the sports that we have. Everyone likes to talk about your football and your basketball teams because they're the most visible as far as exposure of people that come the most to those two games or to those two sports. But we've got golf, we've got tennis, you've got swimming and bowling and of course all the other traditional sports of baseball that people think of and softball, track and field. But we have to figure out, we have our wants and our needs. We need to have uniforms. We need to have equipment to participate in our sports. We want to go to Florida and play spring break baseball. We want to purchase some maybe a third uniform so we can look good on a special night. So those are all fundraising things for us. So our Booster Club does a really good job of trying to help them, but our teams also, if they're really interested and motivated, kind of like Greg's program, if they want to go on, they'll do some fundraising of their own. But fundraising can happen at our level for the Booster Club. Just the Booster Club alone, they'll raise anywhere between 50 to 75,000 in a year just for our other teams to participate and be able to get the extra things or just little things you think like bags. Our golf team this year, they've got hats and someone donated those, but that's not part of the school mandatory equipment thing. So just little things like that, but also it can be big things, but you've got to figure out what your wants are and what your needs are.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I obviously want to get Chip back here. I think there's a billion things we could talk about. The whole, how do you make decisions as ADs, which we've all been, who gets what, how do you make that? How do you get your coaches to get outside themselves? We talk about getting athletes to get outside themselves. How about getting coaches to get outside themselves? I think that's harder. So, I mean, there's so many things. So Chip, promise us you will come back and be a recurring guest for
Absolutely.
us.
Greg, thanks for having the opportunity to, and Tommy for having me on. Greg, I enjoyed listening to your stories and kind of took me back to my college years of coaching and what that's like, and not just from a budget standpoint, but again, the kind of kids you're bringing in, you have a chance to meet and how much they change your life in a positive way. And those are relationships you have for the rest of your life. And I'm sure you probably get invitations to weddings and they send you pictures of when they have kids, and it just kind of makes it special that you had an opportunity to get to know them at a different level. It's the same way for me here, but Tommy, thanks for allowing me the opportunity. I'm glad I certainly got you up to Piqua so we can connect and make relationships down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's our pleasure, Chip, and thanks for sharing and just doing what you're doing for young people in this world. As we know, sometimes we don't get into this profession to really worry about retirement and making a lot of money. It's more about what we could do to be a part of somebody's life. And I've always talked to younger coaches in the I would say, keep them with the theme. You just don't know how valuable your words are sometimes with what you say and how you say to young people, that it's either going to inspire them or it's going to turn them off for wanting something better than what they have. And so I just appreciate what all high school coaches and high school ADs do to just really give them the springboard to life, because that's what's going to put them in a position where they have the opportunities to go on and maybe play at college or more importantly, get scholarships academically and putting that as a priority too, which, again, I just think with everything that Tommy's done with, just this program and really what the theme is in terms of overcoming mistakes and adversity, it is so much about us being able to go back and go, okay, hey, if I was younger and I knew this truth and I could really implement it in the way I communicated with people, I would hope that I'd make a little bit better differences. But you win some, lose some, and then learn along the way.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, good stuff, guys.
Well, thank you to our listeners. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube or Spotify. Give us that 5-star rating. If you have negative feedback, just keep it to yourself or email me. Just don't put it out there publicly. So, all right. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. We will see you next time.